Right, ready please. Mamma mia.
We're going to have members of Parliament coming to the meeting, then leaving and then returning and so on, and others joining us. Because as you know, members of Parliament are very busy and they have a lot on their plate at this time. But I'm delighted that there are at least 4 of them here with us at the moment, and we will be joined by others as we carry on. So, Your Excellency, the Cyprus High Commissioner, my good friend Alekos Zinon is here with us. Honourable members of Parliament, distinguished guests, I know there are other members of the Cyprus High Commission, and we have also here a delegation from Cyprus tonight. We have the Mayor of Morphou, of occupied Morphou, and we have the Councillor from Famagusta as well, who are here with us to show their solidarity with our cause. Gerald Peters, a very good friend of ours, who's been here regularly, and a councillor from Famagusta as well, who is here with us. First of all, I would like to thank our sponsors. This event has been sponsored by members of Parliament, and I would like to thank them for sponsoring the event. Sir Alan Meale isn't here with us at the moment, who will join us later, but I know that he has been the principal sponsor of the event, and we've just been joined by Jim Sheridan, another member of Parliament from Scotland, who Jim, come and join us. And their sponsorship enables us to use these facilities in the House of Commons, both to mark the 38th anniversary of the invasion of Cyprus by Turkey, but also uniquely this year to celebrate the assumption by Cyprus of the presidency of the European Union Council. And we gather here, as we have done every year for nearly 40 years, to express our unyielding demand for justice. For 38 years, the disgrace of a divided island continues. It continues to be tolerated by the international community, despite numerous resolutions of the United Nations, which are gathering dust on the shelves of that organization. The world today is a very different place to what it was nearly 40 years ago. But the injustice perpetrated against Cyprus remains as pervasive and as insidious as ever. The endless human tragedy of the missing, of the refugees, of the enclaved, all of whom we remember today. The outrage of Turkey's apartheid on an island united throughout its long history, now ethnically cleansed, colonized, and forcibly split into two. How can these criminal acts be squared with Turkey's international obligations and its undertakings to the European Union, which it seeks to join? Cyprus has been violated by the Turkish army, but the Turkish ambassador issues veiled threats objecting to the words illegal occupation and invasion, which are included in motions supported by our friends in this House. Turkey finds what we say uncomfortable. It wants to silence us. But we shall not be silenced. We shall not be extinguished. Our voices will be heard. The Cypriot people want their country back. They want to live together as free people and in peace in their own country, a right denied to them by Turkey, which wants to control the island. Turkey's disregard of its obligations is unfortunately bolstered by the acquiescence of powers which have both a moral as well as a legal duty to act. The United Kingdom, more than any other country in the world, has a higher duty to act, derived from its historic treaty obligations. So we ask once again the British Prime Minister to make Cyprus a priority of his government and to apply real pressure on Turkey to change its intransigence. Ours is a political struggle for human rights, freedom, justice, and democracy. These are our values, and these are the values we fight for today and every day. This is not a zero-sum game. The benefits of reunification will be many and varied, naturally for the Cypriots themselves, but also for Europe, the United Kingdom, and other regional stakeholders, including, of course, Turkey herself. Today we lobby Parliament, but we also celebrate the assumption by Cyprus of the presidency of the European Union. It is a moment of immense pride for all of us that our country of origin has just taken over this critical leadership task, especially at a time when Europe and the Eurozone are going through a crisis. I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you for being here tonight, for your contribution to our struggle. And all of our friends in Parliament, some of them are here now and others will join us later. And I want to thank all of them for their support, for their principled and long-standing solidarity with Cyprus. Because I know that without their support, Cyprus would not be the President of Europe that it is today. A President of Europe that is still fighting for justice, but a leader in Europe nevertheless. Thank you very much for being here with us. We've been joined by a number of parliamentarians, and as I say, we'll be joined by others later as well. And I want to acknowledge their presence, because they have been with us for many years. Some of them have constituencies with Cypriots in them, but others are here because they feel passionately that our cause is a just cause, and they've been with us not because they have Cypriot electors in their constituencies, but because they believe in our cause. And I want to welcome them all individually. We've got Matthew Offord, Member of Parliament for Henry. We've got Jim Sheridan, Labour member, who is a Scottish Labour member of Parliament, and has always been a great friend of Cyprus and has always stood by our side. Jim Dobbin, another Member of Parliament who's here with us, hasn't got a Cypriot constituency, but he's a great supporter of our cause. Gale, with no introduction, Sir Roger Gale, another Member of Parliament, staunch supporter of our cause for many, many years. We have Michael Connarty, who is a Member of Parliament from Scotland as well, and I know that he hasn't got that many Cypriots up there, but he's here with us because he believes in our cause. We've got Mike Freer, who has some Cypriots in his constituency, but even when he didn't have any Cypriots and he was a councillor and leader in Barnet, he was always on our side, and I'm delighted that they're all here with us tonight. And I want to ask them to say a few words. Who wants to go first? Roger Gale.
Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, first of all I have to start with an apology. I'm due to meet with the Chairman of Ways and Means in a few minutes' time to discuss the chairmanship of the bill that's being debated on the floor of the House now. So please don't think it a discourtesy that I need to leave. I met with some of you outside the House earlier this afternoon and reminded myself, as if any of us really need reminding, that for 38 years there are people who still do not know the whereabouts of their husbands, their brothers, their sons, and that is a completely outrageous circumstance in this day and age. It is quite simply brutally inhumane that people should be left without any possibility of a sense of closure for so long. And those of us who've been committed to your cause for a very long time, I promise you will not rest until some sense of peace is restored. But of course it does, as Peter has said, go much further than that. The sense of injustice, the sense of outrage is right. That an aspirant European country should be occupying part of the land belonging to another member state, and not only that, but a member state that is, as again Peter has said, now got the presidency of the Council of Ministers, cannot be allowed to continue. It is quite wrong. And we know, because we feel this for you, the desperate sense of need to reunite the island, to restore property, to allow freedom of movement for all Cypriots, not just for Greek Cypriots, but for Turkish Cypriots as well, because they are Cypriots. And when you get a body of people who feel that they can't live in their own land because it's been usurped by others, and when you get, as we have here, so very many representatives of communities that can't visit their graves, the graves of their families, that can't go back to the villages they were born in, or don't feel able to, even if technically they probably can now. Just cannot be allowed to continue. Every year, some of us go to, I was going to say we go to more food, I wish we could, in peace, but we go to Cyprus to join with Bambos, the mayor of Morphu, and his team, and others go to Famagusta, to the Famagusta gathering, because we want to show solidarity with your cause. And every year, it seems to me, I stand at an event like this, or at the Blessing of the Seas in Margate in my own constituency, and express the hope, that this year will be different. To date, that hasn't happened. But that doesn't mean we don't have to carry on working. Doesn't mean we don't have to carry on trying. It doesn't mean that we don't have to go on demanding of the international community a resolution to this issue that is fair and equitable for all concerned. And all I can say to you is that we don't regard this, by the way, as a party political issue. This is not a Labour issue, it's not a Conservative issue, it's not a Liberal issue. Your parliamentary friends are genuinely friends of all Cypriots. And we want to see a resolution to your problem. All I can promise you is that every single person here now, and those who will join you later, will carry on working for you until that resolution is achieved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roger, and thank you for your long-standing support for the cause of Cyprus, which is highly valued and appreciated by all of us. I do want to acknowledge the presence of Eddie O'Hara as well here, who's sitting here with us. Former Member of Parliament and an outstanding friend of the island for many, many years. I would now like to ask Michael Connarty to say a few words. Michael.
Thank you very much, Chairman. People might have noticed that when I came in, I sat among you because I don't seek to be up here. I only came up because the dais was empty, and I didn't want anyone to feel that there was a lack of people willing to come and speak and express their solidarity with you. But it is good to be up to say a few words, because I have watched people like Eddie O'Hara, like Alan Meale, Jimmy Hood, my colleagues from constituencies with large numbers of Cypriots living in them, refugees from their island in a sense, expressing again and again their hopes and seeing some forward movement, and then seeing it all dashed by the influence of Turkey, quite frankly. Seeing the original Annan proposal changed and changed again, and at that time I was the very active member of the European Scrutiny Committee of the House of Commons looking at it, changed and changed in a way that made it acceptable to Turkey, but clearly dashed the hopes of the people of Cyprus for a reconciliation and a movement forward. And we were very critical at that time of the solution that was put to the people, and completely, I think, agreed with the Greek Cypriot community to vote against that proposal. And so I'm happy to be a supporter and happy to come and speak in these meetings from the floor with you. But the thing about the island, I mean, having been to Ireland both on holiday, to see the history, to look at the Curion and other places like that, to see how far back that island stretches in terms of its contribution to the Mediterranean culture, and to see the way it is riven now by the division caused by the invasion is very upsetting. And I think all of us want to see a united island that belongs to one people, the Cypriots, not to any outside influence or outside body. I went recently with the European Scrutiny Committee, as we do, on what they call a pre-presidency visit, and it was wonderful to do so, to go to Cyprus and to speak with the ministers and speak with the leading politicians and the leading administrators about their hopes of what they would contribute during the presidency, and to have a real sense of excitement, a real sense of Cyprus making a contribution, making a statement about its commitment to the European ethos. It was also very exciting for me as a Scot, because I have a refinery in my constituency. I do a lot of oil and gas industry work, to see the plans and the hopes for the parts of the sea where you've now found that black gold that can in fact help an economy so much. But also to understand the way it was being interfered with once again by Turkey's view of the sea, as if Cyprus didn't exist. I can assure you that everyone, I think economically, practically, financially and politically, will support you in having your right to exploit your minerals in the sea that is your given right as an island, just as we are an island, to exploit our resources. But it was sad also, it was very even tragic for me, because we spent about 2 hours going round with the UN divisions in the buffer zone to walk through that huge scar that runs through the island, to see shops and parts of the city that had been vibrant in Nicosia just empty and collapsing and falling. A symbol of what, in a sense, had happened. Somebody had pulled the heart out of the city, and you could see what that had done. But I'll also tell you about another reason I felt it was tragic. We went with the British ambassador to the residence in north of the island, above the buffer zone. And we met people from my sister party, Social Democratic Party, who were Turkish Cypriots, they said. They weren't Turkish. They had very hard things to say about the interference of Turkey in what they hoped was going to be a negotiation towards reconciliation. And they felt some real despair about the fact that that rapprochement, that difficult road that people have to travel in. I look across here and I see Jim Sheridan and Jim Dobbin, myself from Scotland, but not 1 generation or 2 generations away from coming from Ireland, from the south and the north. I've got family in both, and to see the way that countries had to go through reconciliation, with all the problems that were mentioned about Roger Gale, about missing bodies, people who don't know where the dead is, and the people who killed, in fact, some of my relatives in Ireland, but seeking reconciliation and a rapprochement, to see how that's been dragged away by the interference of Turkey, and my sister party members in the north saying that Turkey has interfered and get rid of the person that they thought would negotiate a rapprochement. So for me, as someone who is involved in this place and wherever I've been in politics for 33 years now, because of human rights, because of what is fundamentally correct, whenever Cyprus is discussed, there's only one solution: one island, one people, and that's what I'll certainly fight for.
I have to say, I think that the way you put it, Michael, was so spot on. And I think to come from somebody who is so objective and so impartial makes me feel even more convinced that our cause is right. And I think you did mention, a tragic division. In unequivocal terms, Cyprus has the right to exploit its own resources. These are the things that matter. That Turkey is trying to interfere in an island that doesn't belong to it. These are the things that are so important to us as Cypriots and as British Cypriots as well. So I thank you for those words. They mean a hell of a lot to us. And coming from somebody who has been on our side for a long time. So thank you very much. I would like to acknowledge the presence of a Cypriot councillor. Councillor Stephen Olambritis, with leader of the Merton Council, who's here with us as well. It's nice to see Cypriot politicians in this country coming along to our events. I'm delighted that he's here. And Spiros Vassiliou, another councillor from Southampton, is here as well as George Peters, councillor from Cambridge. Excellent. The more the merrier. So thank you very much for being here. I would now like to ask Mike Freer, Member of Parliament, who's well known in Finchley, a constituency we know well. I'm delighted that you're here, Mike. Please.
If we don't have the microphone, I'll get told off by Doris. I have to say that the Barnet Cypriot councillors aren't here tonight because it's a full council tonight, so they're busy running Barnet, otherwise there would have been a strong Barnet contingent. I'm not going to repeat what colleagues have said, but I just wanted to stress a few things. I mean, I got involved certainly when I was leader of Barnet Council before becoming the MP for Finchley and Golders Green, and going across to Morphu, and of course I'm pleased to see our good friend Mayor Pittas here, and I'm constantly reminded of the promise we gave each other, because in Barnet we have Morphu Way, and when we named a street after Morphu, the deal is that when we have a free Morphu, there will be a Barnet Square. So I'm looking forward to the unveiling of the plaque when Morphu is returned to its rightful people. But I want to stress that here in Parliament, whilst you may think that it is often a forgotten topic, it doesn't grab the headlines, but there are many, many MPs who are quietly working on behalf of the Cypriot people. For the first time ever, we've had a debate on the fate of the missing. I instigated that debate, but it was very well supported by about a dozen MPs, and that got a lot of coverage and a formal response from the Foreign Office. We also had a debate last week on UK-Turkey relations. Now that's interesting and it's worth looking at, because the premise of the debate was to talk about the positive relations between the UK and Turkey. But if you read the debate, you will find that there were many, many MPs who were making points about Turkey's behaviour, not just to Cyprus. Armenia came up, so Turkey does have a track record on behaviour, not just to Turkey, but in other areas. But most importantly, in that debate, it was discussed that Turkey may have aspirations to join the EU, but it can never happen whilst they occupy an EU state. And it was clearly in the debate that whilst there remains Turkish troops in Cyprus, they can never be full part of the international community. And the debate also talked about, in the year that Cyprus takes on the presidency, you cannot have one country refusing to recognise the EU presidency, refusing to recognise the rules and regulations of the EU. And all that was brought out in the debate. So I wanted to reassure you that whilst the Cyprus issue doesn't grab the headlines here, today of all days when we're debating the most arcane parts of Parliament, the Lord's reform, I had to reassure you that Cyprus is an important issue, and all of your friends on the parliamentary benches are busily working on your behalf, and you will continue to have our support.
Thank you so much, Mike. I know how much you believe in this cause, and we appreciate everything that you do for us. Thank you so much. I have a number of other members of Parliament here. I haven't had the opportunity to ask who wants to go first, so I'm asking you publicly to volunteer. Jim Dobbin, another member of Parliament who's always been at our events, and we're delighted you're here, Jim.
Your Excellency, thank you very much, Chairman. As you can gather, I've got a foreign accent as well. I'm from the Kingdom of Fife in Scotland, but my constituency is in the northwest of England, just outside Manchester. I like to think that I'm doing missionary work here in England. And my colleagues keep reminding me when I start to talk about football that I'm an English MP, and don't forget it. But I'll be quite brief, because there are other members of Parliament who are going to make a contribution here, much more experienced than I am. You've got the opportunity now, since you're taking over the presidency of the EU, to shine. Your politicians have got an opportunity to put your case on the agenda, and I think that's something that you should grasp. Take that opportunity to highlight all the problems that you have. Now, like Michael, I was a member of the European Scrutiny Committee for about 14 years, so I have been to Cyprus, to both parts of Cyprus, and seen the massive difference in the problems that exist there. Michael, myself, Jim, are all members of the Council of Europe. And the Council of Europe, of course, is made up of 47 countries. One of them is Turkey. One of them is Cyprus. And there is an opportunity there because the Council of Europe is a human rights platform. It's essentially about human rights. So there are opportunities in the Council of Europe to raise all the issues and concerns that Cyprus has. And that's one of the roles that we as UK politicians can play. And like Sir Roger said, it's across the parties. It's not just one party. We try to work together in the Council of Europe. We try to work together on all of these issues. And that's why I'm here this evening, just to show some solidarity in Parliament here. It's most important that we do that. It's nice to see Eddie here. You're looking really trim and well, Eddie. You're obviously enjoying your retirement greatly, but thank you very much for all the hard work you've done in the past and still continue to do. You're probably a hero in Cyprus. So I won't say much more than that. All you need to understand is that we are all working with you on all the issues and all the problems that you are facing. And we hope in the future to find some resolution to this. And the example that Michael gave you about the Irish problem, in the Irish problem there has been a solution. It took a long time and there was a lot of conflict between the two different parts of that island, but that looks as if it's been resolved, and it's been resolved, through negotiation, in effect. And I would like to see that process happen as far as Cyprus is concerned. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jim. Thanks very much for being here with us tonight. I'd like to invite Matthew Offord, Member of Parliament for Hendon, elected in 2010, who is a recent arrival in the House of Commons, but has been with us for many years prior to that as well. I'm delighted you're here with us, Matthew Offord.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is a pleasure to be speaking in front of everyone here tonight at the annual lobby. It's always a pleasure to speak with you as well in Trafalgar Square. But I think I said 2 years ago that we certainly wanted to see some change. And while I am very happy to come along and speak at these events, I do want to see that change. I don't want to keep making the same speeches, and I certainly believe that my colleagues here tonight feel the same way. But I remember saying in Trafalgar Square, what would actually change mean to us? Well, one of the things about the coalition agreement was to make a pledge about resolving the Cyprus issue. And I was very pleased to see that in the coalition agreement. What's changed for me in the last couple of months was our visit to Cyprus. I visited Cyprus with Jim, also with Nick Dubois, and also David Burrowes, as many of you will know. And we were criticised very heavily for our visit for what we were trying to achieve. And we went there to clean up cemeteries in the north part of Cyprus. We were criticised by many organisations and individuals, I have to say, from this House and the House of Lords. And individuals from Embargo, for example, said that we were partisan and we were only looking at it from one point of view. But at the end of that visit, which I know that we all found very useful, we demonstrated that we were there on behalf of all Cypriots, not just one side or the other. So that meant that we crossed the border several times and had to go through the problems at the Green Line. And that was quite an interesting experience to me, as I've only ever done it once before. But we certainly saw the contrast between the north and the south of the island. We certainly saw in the south where cemeteries were looked after by the municipalities. And we also saw in the north where they were looked after less well. But some were cleaned up, and I took great hope from that. And the hope that I took was reassurances from the Muqtas that they will continue with a programme of keeping cemeteries tidy, grass short, and also to make some kind of repairs to the graves that we saw that had been vandalised. They assured us they would do this, and they would send us a letter confirming their work programme. However, we still haven't received any letters from the Muqtas. It's something that David Burrowes and I will continue to push, and we will insist, even by return to the island, that this actually happens. But one of the things that I took away from the visit as well is that we are the same people, and I feel it's incumbent upon me, as a new member, to get other members involved in the issue of Cyprus. I don't think it matters whether you have Cypriots as your constituents. The issue of Cyprus is one that is relevant to all of us, as it is here in Europe. So it is something that all members should be aware of. So for me, a change will see newer faces speaking here, if we don't have a resolution, in future years or months. Sometimes you feel that change isn't coming, but things like the Berlin Wall coming down was a huge change. So we know that it does happen, and it can happen, and it will happen in this case as well. But one issue I want to say that I've seen change in myself, and that is my view on Turkey. Again, 2 years ago, I spoke in Trafalgar Square and said that if Turkey wanted to join the EU, they had to fulfil certain criteria. They had to ensure that the island wasn't divided, they had to ensure the return of the missing, and they had to ensure that lands and properties were returned to their rightful owners. But I've seen a stubbornness amongst the Turkish government, not only in the issue of Cyprus, but also issues in reflection and also acknowledgement of the genocide in Armenia. And we've also seen it in other causes and other issues of countries such as Israel. As such, I feel that I've hardened my stance on Turkey, and I'm certainly not, if I ever was enthusiastic of their accession to the EU, but I feel now that the issue of Cyprus is that line in the sand that I'm not prepared for us to negotiate and to eliminate. We have to ensure that Cyprus is reunified. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthew. And that is the purpose, to reunite Cyprus, and I believe that is what you believe as well. I think that is what gives us courage to have people like you in Parliament willing to support that objective. Thank you so much. I would like to acknowledge the presence here, the arrival of Andy Love, Member of Parliament for Edmonton, at the end, and of course Theresa Villiers, Member of Parliament for Chipping Barnet, who is also a Minister in the British Government, and who is our guest of honour at the reception to celebrate Cyprus's assumption of the presidency of the EU later. Thank you for joining us, Theresa. Could I ask Jim Sheridan to say a few words, another Member of Parliament from Scotland. I think Scottish Members of Parliament like us, even more than the rest of them.
Thanks, Sheila. See, I'm the sort of Tony Blair lookalike. I take the jacket off. But, can I begin, first of all, by an apology? The guy who's responsible just walked in the door. But by apology, I mean the rally on Sunday at Trafalgar Square. Unfortunately, my aeroplane was late for a couple of hours, so I couldn't make it. And I tried to use these modern communications called mobile phones. But unfortunately, the people I was trying to speak to was Alan Meale and Andreas, who never have their phones turned on. So I couldn't get that message through the rally, but I do apologise. For me, one of the most important things about these rallies, another year, another rally, but it's the discipline, it's the tolerance, and it's the integrity of you as a community who continue every year to argue for the right for Cyprus to be an independent island. Many communities like you would have walked away a long time ago, accepted your lot and moved on. And I'm delighted that you're still here and you're still pursuing us. And like all my colleagues have said, I think if we can maintain the same discipline, the same integrity and the same tolerance, then I think that we're on the right road, shall we say. I visited Cyprus some weeks ago as a holidaymaker. And I went on one of these boat trips that went down to the line, as we can call it, a line in the sea. I don't know if there is one, but that's what they call it, the United Nations line. And people, the boat stopped there and people got off and swam about her. But I sort of sat, and I see Bambas is here, I sat on the boat and looked at Famagusta from approximately a mile away and thought to myself, if that was in the UK, if that was in Scotland, and I was looking at my hometown and saying, why am I not there? And it really is very, very emotional. And I got speaking to some people on the boat who know nothing about Cyprus, who know nothing about the invasion. They're just there to enjoy the sun and the sea and whatever else goes. And I tried to explain to them just exactly what the problems were. And I think that's something that we need to do more often, is to try and take it out into the people and let them, educate them just exactly what's going on. Because I sometimes think we're just too concentrated in London at times, and I think we need to take it sometimes out the shores of London. But as I say, it was a very emotional trip. And like Matthew has already alluded to, on our last trip we went to the north of Cyprus. First time ever I went to the north. I pledged I would never go to the north. However, I went back in my promise, as most politicians do, and I went to the north, and the border control was just an absolute joke. The driver was banned from crossing the border. Some trumped-up charge of he owed a fine or something like that. But anyway, we managed to get there, and what we seen was quite horrific, actually. We visited cemeteries that were left in a mess, an absolute mess. We had some people with us, I think they came from Reading or something. We had 6, it was supposed to be volunteers, but we had 6 people with us who came to see it. And we visited some of the graveyards. And it was extremely emotional to watch these 6 people trying to find their families in the graveyards that were desecrated. Absolutely emotional. And we've seen some of the churches that were used as barns. I think they'd just taken the animals out before we had arrived. So that was the level of what we've seen. We also visited some of the Turkish cemeteries in the south and some of the mosques in the south. And the contrast was amazing. In the north we've seen graveyards left unattended. We've seen churches left unattended. And there was, in fairness, there was an attempt to clean them up, I think as a result of our, and to fairness to David Burrowes, his attempt to try and go and get them cleared up. So they did make an attempt before we got there to clean them up. But the contrast was this. In the north of Cyprus, as I say, they were left in a mess. In the south of Cyprus, we met with the Archbishop and the Mukhtar. The Mukhtar complained that there was an attack, an arson attack on the mosque. And he demanded that CCTV cameras be installed to ensure that this kind of action doesn't happen again. Within days, CCTV cameras were installed. Years, the places in the north of Cyprus have lay there without any attempt whatsoever to clean them up. So that's a contrast from the south that I've picked up and the north. Another thing that I just want to raise with you as well, and then Jim Dobbin's already alluded to me, and Michael and I, we're on the Council of Europe. For my sins, I've been asked to be the rapporteur to look into the missing persons for people in conflict areas in Europe, which obviously will include Cyprus, and I hope to start that inquiry soon. But I have to be completely objective that will include missing people in the north as well. So whilst we'll be asking serious questions about people missing in the south of the island, we will also be asking serious questions about the people in the north. Because the fundamental objective of all this is to get the loved ones some closure in their lives. That's what they're looking for. We can put the politics aside, and the missing people, the loved ones, will have to see just exactly where they are and what happened to them and how we can move on. So until or unless we have that dialogue, then I think we will continue as we are. But I am absolutely committed to the plight of these Cypriot people. There is nothing more offensive, and I've seen it for myself in the north when we drove round the army complex, which looks very, very sinister, I have to say. I come from a part of the country that has nuclear submarines on its coast. They are very, very sinister vehicles, very, very cynical submarines. But they pale into insignificance when you see the army bases in Turkey, who look very, very sinister indeed. So our claim, our case will be to continue to argue the case for a free and independent Cyprus. I am extremely concerned about the minerals that's been found on the south of the island in Cyprus. I am extremely concerned about the tensions that may cause, further tensions that may cause between the south and the north. And already Turkey have made some noises about some claims to these minerals. So I would hope that not just the British government, but any developed countries in America, most importantly, takes a no-tolerance view against Turkey should they decide that they wish to take some of the minerals or some of the profits from the minerals from the north of Cyprus. It's not theirs. It doesn't belong to them. It belongs to the people of an independent Cyprus, and that's the argument that we need to continue to make. So all I can say is, I know it's another year, it's another disappointing year, we're still here, but I genuinely do think if we keep at it, we will get there, and hopefully we'll get there sooner rather than later.
Thank you very much, Jim Sheridan, another great friend of the island. We have been joined by Sir Alan Meale. His no introduction from me. He's the main sponsor of our event tonight, and I thank him for being here with us. I'm sure he will say a few words in a minute. We have also been joined by Lord Dykes, who is a great friend of the island, and he is also the Liberal Democrat spokesperson for European affairs in the House of Lords. I'm delighted that you're here, Lord Dykes. I would like to ask my good friend Andy Love to say a few words next. He also happens to be a Scot, even though he pretends to be London.
He's a dour Scot. Do I get any extra brownie points for combining being a Scot and being a London MP and having a large Cypriot community within my constituency? I hope that shows, if nothing else, that I'm a friend of Cyprus. I was pleased Jim mentioned the inquiry that the Council of Europe are taking up into the missing people, because I, like in many years gone by, went to meet with the missing people protesting opposite Parliament to remind Parliament and parliamentarians of the continuing outrage of the human rights of many people in Cyprus, as Jim has mentioned, both from the Greek Cypriot community but also from the Turkish Cypriot community, that after all of this time, 30 years, they still do not have closure on what has happened to their loved ones. And I was talking to many of the people there, many of them, of course, directly affected, but they reminded me that it isn't just the people who turn up on the demonstration. There are many people, both living here in the United Kingdom, but of course mostly still living in Cyprus, many who have been directly and indirectly affected by what happened in those terrible events in 1974, who simply have not been given the information to allow them to both bury their loved ones, but also find out critically what happened to them. And I think that, if nothing else, makes this demonstration here tonight, the Sunday demonstration and march and rally at Trafalgar Square, and of course the continuing demonstration outside Parliament about the missing people, is a constant reminder that we have to do more. And I'll come back to that in relation to the United Kingdom. I'd like to say, of course, a big congratulations to Cyprus on accepting the rotating presidency of the European Union. As I mentioned on Sunday, in my view, that puts Cyprus very much at the centre of Europe, very much where it should be, but also very much reminding the Europeans that the European community stands, in essence, for two things. First of all, human rights, It is a critically central part of the Constitution of the European Union that it should guarantee the human rights of all those who live within its boundaries. Constantly to remind them that that isn't true for many people in Cyprus, and as Jim has indicated, many people across Europe, is something that is absolutely critically important to do. But it is also the case that the European Union, through the acquis communautaire, recognises the freedoms that exist within Europe, the freedoms of movement, the freedoms of settlement, the freedoms of property, and other freedoms that are taken blithely. We almost don't notice that they exist here in the United Kingdom, and it comes as a surprise and a shock to discover that in some parts of Europe, and in Cyprus in particular, that doesn't exist. And that's another issue that has to be taken up with both the European Union, but more so internationally. And of course, and I say this in almost every speech I make in relation to Cyprus, Britain has a critical role to play in all of this. It isn't just that there is a very large Cypriot community living here in the United Kingdom, which of course there is. You're a reflection of that. It is a community, as Jim has just indicated, that is committed to the issue of Cyprus, are very steadfast in ensuring it is continued to be brought to the attention of everyone who can influence events in Cyprus, and that's right and proper. But it isn't just that. There is a very large British community living in Cyprus, and I was listening to the radio the other day, and it was saying that things are getting more expensive in Cyprus and some people are coming back. They'll be shocked by the weather. They'll just have seen if they're coming back just at the moment. But there is a very big British community in Cyprus, and that reflects the very strong ties that exist. It never ceases to amaze me that every time I go to Cyprus, I run into constituents. I run into people who have lived in my constituency or lived in other parts of London, who know Britain intimately, who know Cyprus intimately, who have family on both sides, who move back and forward. Some people have stayed in the United Kingdom for a long time, returning to Cyprus. Some do it the other way round. But the links are very strong, and that makes Britain a critical player in the Cyprus issue. And of course, Britain has something to contribute. It is a member of the UN Security Council, the main body that carries out the negotiations, and we need to have a firmer UN control of those negotiations to try and move the agenda forward, because that's what's not happening at the present time. Britain is also a member of the European Union, bringing to the European Union's attention, because it is important. Many European countries defer to Britain with a long historical link to Cyprus. We need to be saying more about what it is that Europe needs to do in order to help that UN process. And of course there's a link with the Commonwealth, which is often underplayed, but it is a microcosm of world opinion that exists in the Commonwealth. And if we can persuade the Commonwealth that Cyprus is an important issue, then that helps to do the thing that needs to be done more than anything else at the present time and in the past, and that's to raise Cyprus up the international agenda. It doesn't get enough priority where it matters in the international community. It needs to be at the centre of people's attention, and Britain, in my view, has an important role to play in all of that. And let me say one thing finally, and that is to pay tribute to all of you, many of whom I've seen here not just this year but last year and years gone by. Your continued hope is an inspiration to all of us, particularly to your parliamentary friends, that we need to do more. you have been part of this issue, part of this movement, part of this pressure in order to keep Cyprus where it should be at the forefront of people's concerns. And I want to pay tribute to all of you for doing that. There is much yet to be done. It's really quite hard to be optimistic at the present time, but that shouldn't preclude us in recognising that we need to keep going, particularly at this time. We need to keep fighting because the cause is just. We need to keep fighting because there are all those relatives of the missing people, all those enclaved in the north of Cyprus, all those people who would like to be able to return to their villages, who would like to be able to settle in the parts of Cyprus that they had traditionally come from. There are also very many reasons why we need to continue this fight. And along with you, I can assure you, you've seen all of the people on this top table, that you have very many parliamentary friends of Cyprus. We will continue to fight. You will continue to do battle. And together, there is a hope that we can begin to make the international community recognise its responsibilities after 38 long years, that now is the time to start a process that will eventually lead to proper negotiations and hopefully a resolution of what has been one of the most difficult situations for the international community. But being difficult doesn't mean it cannot be solved, and what we need to do is to work together to put that solution together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andy, and thank you for being there on Sunday at the rally as well. It was highly valued and appreciated by all of us. I would now like to ask another great friend of ours, Lord Dykes, to say a few words. I remember meeting Lord Dykes many years ago when I was a spring chicken, and he was then Hugh Dykes, Member of Parliament. He's now in the House of Lords. I'm delighted that he's here representing the Liberal Democrat Party. And I'm delighted that we have representatives here tonight from all of the three main parties in this country. Lord Dykes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. President. And can I congratulate you now? I mean, time goes fast. I remember this so-called spring chicken. It's now 5 years ago since he took over from Harry. Very dynamic, never stops, very energetic, driving us all mad with his requests. I mean, we enjoy it. And thank you very much for asking me tonight. I'm going to be very, very brief, and I agreed very much with what Andy Love was saying, and there's no need for me to repeat those important things, particularly the humanitarian considerations, which are so important for the future. I hope that's audible, by the way, with the microphone down there. Is that okay for the audience? Yeah? However, I feel uneasy for one reason, by the way, Mr. President, because this room bears an uncanny resemblance to a disused, huge sort of Methodist-type church building in Cornwall about 2 years ago when I was going down to speak to a local audience. And nothing to do with Greece or Cyprus or Cypriots or anything like that. It was down in Cornwall. And so I had to make my boring speech. And then at the end of it, the organiser said, "Well, thanks very much for coming. It's very nice of you. And we enjoyed it." And I said, "Well, thank you very much. I did enjoy it myself too." And he said, "We've got to give you your petrol expenses." I said, no, you've been a very good audience. Don't worry about that. I know it's expensive coming down from London in my small car, but nonetheless, I'm prepared to pay that. You've been a very... No, we always do the petrol expenses. You've got to have your money. He said, "I got £25 here for it," which wasn't covering the cost, but still. I said, no, you've been a very good audience. He said, "You sure?" I said, yes, you keep it. I really enjoyed the meeting. He said, "Well, in that case then, we'll put it in our fund to get really good speakers down here." So you can't win. But it's a great pleasure to be here for a number of reasons, actually, apart from our great love of Cyprus and the Republic of Cyprus, which is a magic territory, which I love going to, particularly because you have terrible weather, unlike us English, with the sun shining here all the time. You have this rain all the time and floods, you know. So in Cyprus it's very difficult for you. I feel sorry for you. But also because it's a great joy to see Eddie O'Hara in the audience there, in the blue shirt, because it was all very well with Eddie O'Hara, the great expert on Cyprus, who knew it intimately as an island, but we were all, as other MPs, mad with jealousy because he spoke fluent Greek, and he not only spoke fluent Greek, but Greek and Cypriot Greek as well, and he knew the difference in the words and the accents. So it was unbearable for us, but we admired nonetheless the prowess. And also, by the way, to pay tribute to our High Commissioner from Cyprus for all the work he does and his team at the High Commission. We thank you. We thank you for that excellent reception last week. I apologise I had to stay for such a short time and rush to Yorkshire to make an equally boring speech like the one I did in Cornwall 2 years ago. But it was a wonderful occasion, and I know you had a very good attendance. I'm just going to say a very quick word about Europe, really, and about the presidency, because the fascinating thing is that when the presidency accrues to a small territory, and Cyprus is not quite the smallest, I think that's Malta, but it's perhaps the second smallest in terms of population, it might be. Luxembourg, of course, Luxembourg with 300,000 traditionally is smaller, quite right. So it's the second of the new ones, I was thinking of the 10 new in 2004. And the Maltese friends won't mind us saying that Cyprus is distinguished for 100 different reasons, but one of them is it's the most educated island in the Mediterranean. It has more PhDs and MBAs per square kilometre than any other single territory.
Quite a few here.
Quite a few of them here. And that not only redounds to the benefit of the island itself, but also for the rest of us now that you're members of the EU. And the other great thing is that when it's a very small territory, the European Commission moves in, not to take over and to tell you what to do, but to move in to help the sovereign country, Cyprus, administer the presidency period efficiently. And I'm sure, High Commissioner, you'll agree that that does happen, and with your knowledge of Europe, you know how it works, the machinery, and it'll be a great period of progress. And I think that we go on after that to Lithuania, I think is the next one, isn't it, for the presidency? Ireland, and then Lithuania. So that'll be an interesting contrast, another smaller member state, but one of the earlier ones, and all working together for the good cause of Europe. And don't believe what the nationalistic British press says about the European Union. The European Union is going to still flourish, and so is the euro. The euro is a very strong currency. There are some individual member states finding it difficult, of course, but they'll get through it. And when you think of the United States with its $16.4 trillion debt, which is irreducible, the system is incapable of ever reducing it, the European Union total debt is very modest in comparison. So the British press, with their nationalistic habits, think only of America, Switzerland a little bit, because that's a tax haven, and Britain. They don't think of the European cause. But the Cypriots do, because the Cypriots are natural Europeans. So all in all, it's going to be a brilliant presidency period, although a difficult one because of the financial and economic crisis. And I don't want just the larger of the European member states and the older ones as well, Germany, France, Britain and the others, to be in charge of resolving these economic and financial crisis points. I want the new and smaller territories to be involved. When Cyprus became a member, there were siren voices saying, no, it's still a divided territory, don't let them come in yet, they should be a single unified territory. There were other examples of countries that hadn't completed their reunification, and Germany was a notable one, of course, of a big country. And we, all the lovers of Cyprus, insisted it was a good idea, and it was a great moment of joy in 2004 when Cyprus joined. You are contributing already a great deal, both in the institutions and in the intellectual effort of building a solid European Union, with the smaller territories just as important as the big ones. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lord Dyke, and thank you for saying so much, that is so positive about Cyprus and about Cyprus's assumption of the presidency of the European Union. And thank you for saying that it was a good thing that Cyprus joined the European Union as well. I really appreciate it. Sir Alan Meale is an outspoken, passionate supporter of Cyprus, has been for many, many years, and has been a great friend of ours in this House. I'm delighted he's here with us once again. I'd like him to say a few words. Sir Alan Meale.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Mr. President, Minister, High Commissioner, Minister, my Lord, colleagues. I say it in that order because I think it's vitally important that you and the communities actually realise that there are people who are at various different stages in our communities who actually represent, not only in their employment like the High Commissioner is, but put much more into it than just simply their job. Everywhere I go, the High Commissioner is there, and when you thought you've got away with doing a little bit less work because you've got much on, he'll walk around the corner and catch you doing nothing for the Cypriot cause and pick you up on it. And to my left here is somebody who's in a different political party altogether than me, and we stand foursquare against each other on most political issues actually, but not on Cyprus. And I think you should be very, very grateful that somebody who, when they get into a ministerial role, is not subsumed by all the threats and innuendo that's laid down by the civil service, but stands foursquare on the issue of Cyprus. It's a very difficult issue. I think it's important, colleagues, that one remembers our place. And I was reminded today of my place in the Cypriot cause by that old campaigner of yours, probably the hardest worker for the Cypriot cause, Andreas Karaolis. Is he here? Must be here. Must be hiding. He must be next door with the food and drink. Because half of my day today was taken up with getting the car in, which is now under a different security system, which meant we have to drive halfway down the embankment and back up with the same car without anything on it. It's just that we went that way and we were brought back. Then to get into here, and then as he was unloading all the drinks and the food with anybody could get hold of, he sent me off to get the one important thing, which is the bottle opener, which I've just brought back from the speaker. Actually, it's his own bottle opener. The only place I could think I could get one. But it was Andreas all those many, many years ago. I used to, before I was a Member of Parliament in 1987 in June, I went to the person I'd worked with for many years as running his office, which is Tony Benn. And I said, look, I've done many things for you and I've given you much advice, most of which has been totally and utterly useless. But there's been some good in there somewhere. Can you give me one piece of advice? And he said, yes, I can. He said, find one international cause and stick with it no matter what. It'll make you a better politician. And that actually happened. And I went around every single one of them. And the last one was Cyprus. And it was advertised on the whip, and I went upstairs and I went down the corridor, and there's a bunch of people, about 30. Mary Carolis was one of them, and others that are in this room. And Andreas was there, and I never decided really on the Cyprus cause. I was adopted by it. And I was taken into a room and made to chair a particular meeting, and I was never allowed to escape. And I've been with you ever since in that respect. And I remember Tom Cox, who was with Eddie O'Hara, great comrades of long standing on the Cyprus cause. He said, Alan, beware. Let me tell you this, if you stick with it with the rest of us, it'll take over your life. And I think it has in many respects. It's taken over many of our lives who have committed ourselves to this fine cause. And it's a cause which we should commit ourselves to. Because, as a British citizen, we should remind ourselves that actually Cyprus has committed itself to us, despite ourselves, despite the way we've treated you, despite the way we've let you down year after year after year, despite how we treated you when we were in charge of the island. We did do some good things with record keeping and all the rest, and land registry, which is going to come in handy at some time in the future. But, we let you down very, very badly. And when the case came in the early 60s to pass the Cyprus Act and allow you to have your independence from imperialism and run your own country, we then let you down again. The first instance, somebody came along, for one reason or another invaded, took over your country on invasion, and we had an American politician. Labour had been in power about 6 weeks. We didn't know what the hell we were doing. That was the truth. And we were told by Henry Kissinger, don't worry, it's only an incursion, it'll be over in a few weeks. It wasn't. We were let down badly by him, and we let you down very, very badly indeed. And that's been the case ever since then. by a succession of governments of Britain, of various political persuasions, across the whole spectrum of political parties, who haven't actually done what they should do. And that's probably the major reason why I believe that all British parliamentarians, out of a sense of responsibility, should, as a priority, put Cyprus really to the top of their international agenda. And I say to you that I believe that there are many colleagues in this room, and some have been and left, and one who's just come in, David Burrowes, who have committed themselves to doing just that, to sticking with the issue, to try and lift it up the agenda time and time and time again until we get the result which we know is the fair and honourable and right course of events for Cyprus. And I'm very pleased that David's come in, because just a short time ago in the British Committee on Cyprus, the CPA committee, of which he's chair and vice chair, you've got the rest of the officers of that august body in the room here, we decided that we'd had enough of promises that are being given from everybody from the United Nations to the European Parliament, the Council of Europe, although I think it's going to change with Jim Sheridan getting his appointment, which I think is very, very important. And we decided to say, if nobody else is going to reopen the whole of the missing persons inquiry, then we're going to launch it ourselves. We're going to do it. And we're going to do it with your help, and we're going to do it with various international bodies and the CPA and cross-political parties, and we're going to start the process of trying to reinvigorate the whole exercise of doing that. And we're going to treat this very, very seriously indeed. We're going to publish reports at the end of it. We hope it will cause and affect a different approach towards Cyprus, and again, lift that issue up the agenda, the political agenda. It is important to do that. I can remember a time not so very long ago when Cyprus was really the top 1996, 97, Cyprus was the top of the political agenda in Britain. No doubt at all about that. We put an early day motions down in those days. 137, 147 members of Parliament signed our early day motions on Cyprus. That gives you a bevy of the level of support we had in this place. And we've got to try and reinvigorate that. But it's not just ourselves quietly receiving advice and taking information and developing reports that are going to do this. Charles Thompson, some of you who know about Charles Thompson, he did the film Missing all those many years ago, which won many prizes around the globe in Australia and Cannes and in the United States. He has agreed to go back to that report and redo, update, modernise that report right up to the present day, which will go along with our examination of the whole issue of the missing. So he'll be going back to look at all these families, to see what's happened from those days of when he first did those stories, and to see if anything's moved on from them. And we'll not just be doing it, and he'll not just be doing it in a light all on his own, but we'll be involving the London branch of the Missing Persons Committee, who is at every march and demonstration. They do fantastic work. They stand idly by and let everybody have the say, and then they come in and thank people for being there. We have to give them much more than that, much more participation. And we'll be doing, as we started the whole project with Charles Thompson 20 years ago, with Mr. Sagidis and his party and his Missing Persons Committee in Nicosia and in Cyprus. Now, we have to do that because, as Jim Sheridan actually rightly pointed out, some of us on this top table here are members of the Council of Europe. Eddie O'Hara used to, Tom Cox used to be. In fact, Jim and I have leading positions in our side on that. And we're out there not just because it's a frolic and it's a bit of a time in Europe. She spent a lot of time in Europe before she was a minister and member of Parliament. It's not about that. It's very, very serious stuff. In Europe, the reason why I'm a European, committed European, unlike some in this place, is because I believe in justice, the rule of law and democracy. And that's what the Council of Europe is all about. And we'll be using that as an opportunity to get the whole of this thing on the missing lifted up. But it's important we do that, because things have moved on since those days when we started to try and get the issue of Cyprus lifted up the agenda. People said, I can remember, Turkey had a veto and everything. We said, no, there's no veto. No veto in a free independent state in Europe. None at all. We won't accept that. And we defeated the cause of the right of veto of Cyprus. We defeated especially Turkey, who laid down a mandate that Cyprus wasn't to be allowed to become a free and independent member of the family of the European Union. We defeated them on that. Largely, I may say, by Britain, who cross-party said it was right that Cyprus should come into the European family and should be part and parcel of it. But I say this to you. I say this to you now. Don't think for one moment that Labour government as it was then, or Labour Party or Conservative Party in this place, did it just out of trying to get the cause of Cyprus lifted on just as a favour towards the mistakes it's made in the past. It did it for its own benefit, because it could see the role that Cyprus is going to play in Europe and what it would play against the whole issue of the family of Europe if it wasn't part and parcel of it. And I say this to you, it had its own stock exchange, it could be an offshore bank in Ireland, which was then a possibility in Europe. It wouldn't be if it was inside. He'd had a better trading relationship with the world, Middle East in particular, oil and gas, Eastern Europe, which we had no kind of relationship with. And in these times of economic stature and firmness and structure, if you're going to trade your way into growth and out of recession, or to guard yourself against recession, then you trade with the new world. And that's Africa. And nobody had a better trading relationship and understanding of Africa than actually Cyprus. It also had the second largest shipping fleet in the world registered. And it also had one other thing. It had a window into space. One of the only 6 windows in space on our planet. That's why America wants to be there with its listening station. That's why France was there. That's why Britain is there. That's why Europe wants to remain there. All of these reasons, which are the reasons why people took the decision for Cyprus to come into the family. And now, the remark which I can remember Vassos Lysiridis said many years ago, that if Cyprus had crude oil rather than olive oil, there wouldn't be a problem for Cyprus's independence. Well, you've got it. You've got it. Noble Oil has went out and done an extremely long churned piece of research into the possibility of oil and gas in the Mediterranean, the South Mediterranean, and he is without any shadow of doubt. I've seen all the papers which have been produced by Noble and which have now been accepted by all the member states concerned, apart from Turkey and Meale. And it's proved conclusively that the 12 blocks on there, which are all internationally graphed and boxed, and relate to each country in those international blocks to where they belong to. 4 of the best, all of that southern Mediterranean area for oil and gas belong to Cyprus. 9, 10, 11, and the most important of all, 12. Which is said to be the largest deposit of liquefied gas ever found in the Middle East. As strong, as big as Saudi Arabia itself. So now the great cause of Cyprus becomes even more important to Europe. Becomes more important to Europe than it ever has been before. And I give this message to you about Turkey's threats and innuendo over the whole of this issue. If they think that they can threaten Cyprus and a member of the family, whereas in the past Britain have stood idly by and said that it's only an incursion and we shouldn't do very much because it'll all be over in the next few weeks, I can assure you that Europe won't do that when oil and gas is concerned. You have all seen what's happened in the world because of oil and gas. You've seen what's happened in terms of war and intrigue in the whole of the Middle East and the Far East because of oil and gas. If Turkey attempts to take back any of those rightful ownerships of somebody in the members of the family of Europe, it actually puts at risk European allies themselves, and they will not do that. They won't allow that to happen. Can I just conclude by saying in particular what Hugh Dykes referred to? People sometimes look at small islands and think they're all lovely people, they smile, they drink the odd beer, they swim in the sea, and the rest of the time it's snooze time. Cyprus is not like that. Hugh Dykes has just said to you how bright and able your nation is. According to the OECD, you're the most educated race on earth, pro-rata the population. That's because you've educated your families, you've invested nearly all that you've earned into that most important of things. And that is one of the reasons why we'll get through this. And it's one of the reasons why we will help and be determined to stick with you to do that. Because your recovery is now most important of all to Europe itself. Europe has to trade its way and build its way and grow its way out of the present economic difficulties that it has. And it can do that with an ally and a nation which lies within its family, Europe. And I say this to you, you've seen people who've been here tonight. Some of them are ministers, some of them members of the House of Lords, some of them are on various committees, some of them have spoken and left, some of them are in the Conservative Party, some of them in the Labour and Liberal parties. We will stand foursquare with you, and we will not stand idly by until the day that you win your free and your independent nation in our country.
Meale, we are meant to be starting our reception about now, but a number of other parliamentarians have arrived, and I need to acknowledge their presence and give them the opportunity to say a few words if they wish. Normally we have a debate and we have questions and answers. I think that may not be possible tonight because of the reception, but what I would encourage you to do is that you speak to the parliamentarians after this event in the room next door. But I would like to acknowledge the presence of Mike Gapes, who has just joined us, who has been a friend of Cyprus, former chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the House of Commons, now a member of that committee. I'm very pleased that we acknowledge your presence. We have, of course, David Burrowes, who would like to say a few words in a minute. We have Sir Gerald Kaufman, who has just joined us, who is a great friend of Cyprus, a veteran. I would like you to come up if you would, please, Sir Gerald. Thank you very much. And of course, I would like to leave Teresa last because she's a minister and she's our guest of honour. I'd like her to say a few words at the end. But I'm going to ask David Burrowes to just say a few words for now. Yes.
Thank you very much, Dan. So it's a great pleasure to be with you. In some ways, as probably others have said, it's always tinged with sadness and regret that we're meeting to discuss what is one of the great unresolved problems that we've seen. We've covered over a number of years in Parliament a number of seeming intractable areas of countries that have been able to be solved where peace and reconciliation had, but still Cyprus goes on. I spoke in Parliament last week during a debate about UK and Turkey relations, and take one or two interventions in my speech. Cyprus wasn't mentioned, but Cyprus needs to be mentioned. And the point of what I said last week is that Cyprus needs to be central to any issue of talk about relations with Turkey and in terms of Foreign Office policy. Cyprus, as has been said, and probably I could say already, who definitely has been said before, I'm sure, even though I wasn't here, but Cyprus has quite rightly assumed the presidency of the European Union, and quite rightly so. And as Teresa will testify, and other ministers when they go to Nicosia, it is extraordinary and intolerable that they are attending the capital of a divided capital of Europe. It is intolerable, and as years go by, sadly, we can sometimes be fatigued, we can tolerate the intolerable, and we shouldn't. We should not do that. And every minister from Europe that goes to Nicosia should recognise that, should see that, and say, why is this happening? And it's interesting that the talks, as have stalled, and people say that there's no prospect of the talks during this 6 months presidency. And at the same time, people say it's got nothing to do with Turkey. But we see the connection there, don't we? We see the fact that Turkey isn't having anything to do with formal European channels. And we see that Turkey is calling the shots. Because plainly, I mean, it's obvious, if nothing is going to happen in the 6 months, the reason it's not happening is because of Turkey. So it really just nails it, the colours to the mast, that Turkey have a lot to answer for. But what can we do about it? We've heard, I don't want to stand too much in the way of the reception and the eats and the drinks and others, but just very briefly, what can we do? What can we do practically? And we need to make sure that we don't just perpetuate the status quo by inaction ourselves. Yes, members of Parliament, and I'm chairman of the all-party parliamentary group in Cyprus, and can myself say that, from a cross-party point of view, there are parliamentarians standing up for Cyprus as much as we can. And we need to keep doing that. We need to keep doing that with vigour during the 6 months, particularly as well. We need to make sure that everyone knows that quite properly Cyprus is recognised as a sovereign state, quite properly recognised apart from Turkey recognising it. And ministers need to make sure in this time of times that they say to Turkey that it is unacceptable that it isn't recognised. It's unacceptable that Cypriot ships with their flags are not able to enter Turkish ports, because it is about Europe, but it's also about recognising international agreements. And Turkey, if they wanted to play by the rules, they have to accept a rotating presidency. If they want to be part of the club, they have to accept those rules, and they should recognise as a matter of course and principle. But also they have to recognise international agreements. And that brings me on to another area where I have written along with colleagues to the Prime Minister to say that, and I'm sure it's been mentioned already, Famagusta and the Varosha fenced-off section. It has to be the case that we put additional pressure on ensuring that Varosha is freed under UN supervision, that refugees are welcomed back, and we get Varosha back up and running. That has to be a true confidence-building measure that we need to put pressure on. Now, the Prime Minister very much clearly said that he agrees with the principles, of course he would, with the resolutions, and that he will be making representations to the Turkish authorities. And we need to do more. We need to make sure that there is real positive movement over the next months. Another area, though, and we've obviously we've seen some of us. I unfortunately wasn't able to be there, but we've seen again year on year out the relatives of missing persons out by the front of Parliament. We need to do much more in that regard. We need to see that as a confidence building. Indeed, it's interesting that in my all-party group, which has representatives from both communities there present at the meeting, the issue that has particularly united both communities has been the issue of missing persons. We can welcome the good progress made by the bicommunal committee in Cyprus on that. And we need to help support the work they've done. We went over recently to Cyprus, and we will follow up the Committee for Missing Persons work. We'll have them over to kick off our inquiry, which Alan mentioned, to be able to just move further and quicker. But as I said in the debate last week, what needs to happen is information. It needs to happen is Turkey need to abide by European court decisions. They need to abide by those decisions which have been made loud and clear, that they need to give information, basic truth information to relatives who've lost loved ones. Lost loved ones who are lost now in those army camps, or indeed some in Turkey. That needs to happen in the next months, and we will be putting pressure in that regard. And finally, one area that, along with colleagues that I took part in, was a visit to Cyprus. Now, there were reservations from the National Federation about the merits of us going over to the north to be able to go with village associations, to be able to take some practical steps, to be able to say, this village is a village that belongs to the people of Cyprus, to the villages. To say, yes, this cultural heritage that sadly has been destroyed and desecrated must be restored, and that can't be perpetuated whatever is going on with the talks. That can't go on a day longer. We can't go on visits and just walk on the other side. We need to do something practical about it. So we led an initiative which originally was going to be hundreds of volunteers, but due to the propaganda in the north, ended up having to be scaled down. But nevertheless, we went, and indeed there's members from the Asha village association who were able to go for the first time with us and visit the grave that had been, yes, destroyed and desecrated, but also say loud and clear that it matters. It matters that you can't just simply destroy the memories of loved ones. And so that means we'll be following them up in helping to restore and put the crosses back on those graves. Yes, a small step, but a very important step. And with colleagues, we were able to go to Afania village and for the very first time see a church and the debris and all the muck over years being cleared out, and just cleared out. No, not fully restored, but yes, make an important point that this belongs to people, these churches and this heritage. And so we'll do more of that. And I'll encourage the Federation to talk with us about our experience that we learned, and with the village associations about, yes, we've got to talk the talk, but we've got to walk the walk and ensure that we are very much connected and properly dealing with practical measures of saying that Cyprus, we cannot tolerate a divided island for any longer. And so I just conclude just by saying that we'll continue to work hard, I'll continue to work hard, and we need to do that together to make sure that we're not letting get away with just sort of a 6-month nothing, that we ensure that we do work hard practically in small measures and large measures to rebuild that confidence, to unite Cyprus, which is obviously, of course, good for Cypriots, all Cypriots. It's good for Britain and it's good for the wider region.
Thank you very much, David, and thank you for everything that you're doing in the House of Commons. The Federation will always be there to have a dialogue with people like you, David, and that is the case with all other members of Parliament as well who are interested in Cyprus. We have with us a veteran politician, I think I can call him that with safety. His name is Sir Gerald Kaufman. He's been with us for many, many years. He's a true friend of Cyprus. I'm so pleased that you have joined us, Sir Gerald.
Thank you very much. I first visited Cyprus in 1961, and I visited a united Ireland. I had read the novels of Lawrence Durrell, and I followed the roots in the novels of Lawrence Durrell. I was committed to Cyprus even before I first visited it. I was a journalist on the Daily Mirror and the Sunday Pictorial, and Barbara Castle was a columnist for the Sunday Pictorial, and I used to research her articles, and she was one of the greatest champions of an independent Cyprus that we have ever had in this building, in the House of Commons. And I learned from her, and I learned when I went to Cyprus. And then, after many visits and championing Cyprus, I came into the House of Commons in 1970, and we had the disaster of 1974. And I'm a very loyal member of the Labour Party, but that issue and that crisis was utterly mishandled by James Callaghan when he was the Foreign Secretary. If we had made a stand then, things might have been very different in the succeeding years. And we have to remember that what happened was an illegal invasion by a power which took over 37% of an island which became a sovereign state. And I always, with my colleagues, far from alone, championed Cyprus, first of all, to achieve its sovereignty, to achieve its membership of the Commonwealth, to achieve its membership of the United Nations, to be an internationally accepted sovereign state as it has now become. And I agree with my colleague here today about the way in which we have, not anybody in this room, but our sovereign governments have truckled to Turkey. It isn't simply the fact that Turkey occupies 37% illegally and unlawfully and in violation of all international law of another sovereign country. It is that its other policies are seriously objectionable. Films have been made. My friend Alan Parker, the film director, made a film about what went on in Turkey. Human rights is a huge issue there, and it goes on even today with the domination of the military in what claims to be a democracy. When I was Shadow Foreign Secretary, I championed very strongly indeed, A, the sovereignty of Cyprus, and B, the recognition of Cyprus in all international fora. And since I have criticised a Labour Foreign Secretary, I am not being party political when I say that when Malcolm Rifkind was Foreign Secretary and we were campaigning for the rights of Cyprus in this Parliament where we are meeting this evening, Malcolm Rifkind said that it was not possible for Cyprus to be recognised as a member of the Commonwealth, as a member of the UN, until the problem with Turkey was solved. And he had that absolutely and totally the wrong way round. The fact was that the policy that I framed as Shadow Foreign Secretary was implemented by Robin Cook when he became Foreign Secretary, and we had the recognition of Cyprus, the admission of Cyprus as a sovereign state to all international fora. And today we are meeting this evening to celebrate not the culmination, because the culmination we still await, but to celebrate the achievement of Cyprus on this wonderful evening where we are recognising what Cyprus has achieved in the European Union. And as I say, Rifkin said it must not even be admitted to what was then the European Economic Community until the Turkish problem was solved. And we must not rest. There are certain international problems which have lasted far too long. And I raised these when I led a delegation to the United Nations a while ago. And I named 3. I will not trouble you with the other 2, though they mean a very great deal to me. But one of the 3 was Cyprus. And I raised that at the United Nations, and as I said, that I will not leave the House of Commons until the issue of Turkish illegal occupation of Cyprus is solved and dealt with. And even though time has gone by, I retain that commitment. I am, with everybody in this room, I claim no personal merit myself, but I am utterly committed not simply to the sovereignty of Cyprus, which is recognised internationally, except in one country. I am utterly and totally committed to the territorial integrity of Cyprus. The looting, the refugees, the ruination which has taken place while complacent countries have looked on is something we will not forget. And I am honoured to be able to address this assembly tonight on this historic celebration and commemoration. But I add, as everybody in this room knows, there is unfinished business. And I, together with so many of my colleagues, will not rest until that business is finished with the total territorial integrity of the island of Cyprus.
Well, what can I say about those words spoken with passion, wisdom, complete clarity? Really, what an articulate ambassador for Cyprus you are, Sir Gerald. I'd like to have you with me every time I speak to a British minister or a British politician in government, because everything you have said has resonated with me. I'm sure that it has resonated with every other member of this audience. So thank you so much, Sir Gerald. Well, the last person I would like to ask to say a few words, to address you, but also to celebrate tonight the assumption by Cyprus of the presidency of the Council of the European Union, is Teresa Villiers, Member of Parliament for Chipping Barnet, but also importantly a minister in the British government, and she's here with us today both as a Member of Parliament but also as a minister, and she was with us on Sunday at the rally in Trafalgar Square as well as she has been year after year. She's a true friend of Cyprus. We value her and we value her support and her solidarity. She means a lot to us, and I'm delighted that Teresa is here with us tonight.
Well, it's a relief that the constraints of ministerial office haven't prevented me from coming here as in my capacity as MP for Barnet and my long-standing capacity as friend of Cyprus, because I'm very proud that my constituency has a large and flourishing and successful community of Cypriots, but they're not the only reason that I'm here with you today. I'd be here even if I didn't have any Cypriots living in Chipping Barnet. I'd be very sad about that, but there's another reason why I'm here, and that's why I was campaigning for Cyprus long before I became MP for Chipping Barnet, because a very grave injustice was done in 1974, and that injustice continues today, and that injustice is intolerable and unacceptable, and it must change. Now, I was struck by the words of Jim Sheridan earlier on. You know, can we visualise what the situation would be if that had happened in the United Kingdom? If there were bits of Great Britain where the residents were deprived of their homes, unable to return, separated by barbed wire and a pseudo-border. You can't imagine that that situation would have remained unresolved for nearly 40 years, and yet that is the situation in Cyprus, and it is a reproach to us all in Europe that is allowed to continue. So that's why I'm here, to support your struggle for justice for Cyprus, for freedom for Cyprus, for that reunification, which is so obviously the right future for all of Cypriots. We know that this isn't a zero-sum game. We know that all Cypriots stand to gain immensely with a just, lasting and balanced solution to reunite Cyprus and bring its communities back together. So there's grim news across much of Europe. You know, we're all suffering from economic challenges, Cyprus not least. But there's also some good news, and that, of course, is the assumption of the presidency of the Council of Ministers, the presidency of the European Union by Cyprus. And as I've been saying in many fora over the last few weeks, I think we should have a sense of pride that a nation which has too often in the past been the victim of the power play of larger and more powerful nations is now heading up the European Union, now undoubtedly has a seat at the top table of international affairs. And I was in the European Parliament, as you've heard, when Cyprus joined the European Union. I was there pressing the yes button when the historic vote took place in the European Parliament to decide whether Cyprus and other new countries would be admitted to membership. And many people said it couldn't happen, or it couldn't happen without a settlement. And I was delighted that they were proved wrong. And now we see the culmination of those ambitions with the Cypriot presidency, which I'm sure is going to be very successful, but they've no doubt got very big challenges ahead over the next 6 months. I'm sure they'll rise to that challenge, but it will be tragic that we will see, you know, important, eminent people coming from around Europe to those presidency meetings, and they'll arrive in Europe's last divided capital. You know, over 20 years since the Berlin Wall came down, it is astounding that Nicosia remains divided, and it is equally astounding that the country which holds the presidency of the European Union is still subject to an occupation by a foreign army, an occupation which has been condemned in numerous UN resolutions. So I think it's vital that we see change and that we see progress. It's time for Turkey to start giving answers on the missing. It's time for them to comply with their obligations under the Ankara Protocol and admit Cyprus shipping and aviation to its airspace. It's time for them to recognise not just some of the governments of the European Union, the club they're seeking to join, but all of them, including the Republic of Cyprus. It's time for Turkey to comply with all those countless UN resolutions, all those judgments in the European Court of Human Rights. It's time for Turkey's troops to go back to Turkey, to leave Cyprus free for the Cypriots to decide their own future, because I know there's a huge amount of goodwill across all Cypriots left to themselves to decide their future. I'm sure they would come up with that balanced, just solution which will bring together Cyprus in the way everyone here in this room is so determined to achieve. Thank you.
I have to say personally, I was quite moved listening to you, Theresa. I know you mean it from the heart, and that means so much to us. So thank you so much. Well, we're meant to be having a reception now, so it's up to you. Rather than have a reception or we have a debate. So, I think
Andreas has already made a decision.
I think bearing in mind that we are meant to celebrate, you know, the assumption by Cyprus of the presidency of the European Union, we deserve ourselves a reception. But I think before we do that, I would like to thank once again all members of Parliament who have turned out here tonight, individually and collectively. Your support is invaluable to us. Cyprus is a weak party in this dispute, if you like. It is a small country, a small island. But as I said, in Trafalgar Square on Sunday, it's a proud island with a resilient people. It's not going to give in to Turkey, whatever Turkey says and does. The Cypriot people will fight for their island to be reunited. But we have to rely on your support, particularly in a country as important as this, to make sure that that happens. So thank you very much, Teresa, Sir Gerald, Sir Alan Meale, David, Jim, Andy, Jim, and Mike. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We will now proceed to the room next door where there are refreshments.
Yeah, it's all nice early on, and it's all doing quite well. Because I
Council by Cyprus. And I want to thank her and acknowledge the fact that she has been willing to be on while I tonight. And I want to ask Teresa to say a few words and to host Cyprus and Cyprus' success in becoming the President of the European Union. We have a number of other members of Parliament whom I would ask to join us and hear what Teresa has to say. Representing here the British government. Jim Dobbin. Gerald Sir Gerald Kaufman here.
He's just gone. He's got 2 minutes ago.
And the Vice Chairman of the Federation.
Well, I'll keep it very brief since you were patient enough to listen to me speak earlier on, and indeed so many of your good friends of Cyprus who came to express their support and commitment. And so really all I need to do is to reiterate those sentiments, that strong support you enjoy right across the different political parties, and to say a very big thank you to Peter and the Federation for their hospitality this evening, and to give all our good wishes to the Cyprus presidency. As I said in the other room, there'll be some tough challenges ahead for them, particularly on the EU budget, but I'm sure they'll rise to the challenge and they'll be very successful. So it's my great honour to be able to propose a toast to the Cyprus presidency.
Thank you.
Ο Δήμαρχος ελάτε είμαστε γύρω από Παπαϊβρυδίνη και στη Λιανού. When you give it to him, you're never going to give it to him. There's a lot of people who come to
Right, ready please. Teresa. Hello. Afistinat de zona de Josomel para calor, para calor.